agree with you, Willis. I feel like I had very similar experience. I also like surprisingly also felt extremely anxious about today. I think I keep having these anxious feelings ever since like COVID. Like I feel like a totally different person. And so I don't think this would have made me as nervous 3 years ago, but I was extremely anxious and like very in my head going into this. And this has been absolutely lovely. And I'm so grateful. And I would love to stay connected.
Thank you all for staying around for donuts and ice cream. I'm really excited for these dope-ass donuts that we're getting.
Me too.
And our last two questions. I just want to acknowledge that I think it's really interesting that everyone has talked about community and in some ways legacy, in all honesty, right? Like as you all are talking about teaching and the impact and even community as you're talking about your family moving on or growing, it's really kind of rooted in this concept of legacy. And I just find that really interesting because once again, that's not what I intended to connect you all on. And I think that's pretty incredible. So as we eat some dessert together and move into these last two questions, I want to ask Yoshi to pick the next person to ask their question and answer it.
Awesome. I would like for Willis to go ahead and ask his
It's because I'm
question.
Dominican.
Maybe. We gotta stick together, you know.
My question is, what is a tradition that warms your heart? The one that comes to mind immediately is during the pandemic, at the very beginning, nobody could connect with each other, and every Friday, like I spent the entire week by myself most times, and it was just like every Friday I was just like, I can't do this no more. So I would go to my mom's house. I don't care what disease is in the air. I'm just gonna go. Like I can't do this. Like there's no way. And every Friday I would go over, and everybody was disconnected, so we would all get on FaceTime. So I got like, you already know, like so much family. It's like the FaceTime, like you have to scroll over to see everybody else's faces, how many people were on the call, and we tried WhatsApp, then we tried Messenger, we tried everything until we can like fit everybody in. And every Friday we would have wine, we would have Taylor Port. I don't know if anybody's ever had Taylor Port before, but it's very strong, cheap wine. And every Friday it just became a thing. Like every Friday was just Taylor Port Friday. And we would all look forward to just
Love that.
And it's still TP Friday. Like that's still, I mean, I don't drink that often anymore, but I'll still, if I have family around and it's some Taylor Port, then it's like we'll enjoy that. But it was like the thing during the like it was all year long. It was every Friday. We just look forward to connecting with everyone, and if we were in person, then we would do it in person, and if not, we would do it virtually. So, yeah.
That's so cool. I actually have a question. Are there any traditions that kind of tie back to, you know, where you're from, Dominican Republic, that you really value as well?
You know, I think one that I really value is how we greet each other. And if you walk into, you know, even if you just saw them a few minutes ago, you say, "Sion mami, sion papi," like you greet that way. And like my mom's reminding me, like, are you gonna teach Elliot that? Like, am I gonna teach my son that? And like I haven't. Like he just says dad or daddy, and that's it. We just kind of communicate in that way. But that is a tradition that is like, if I don't keep it up, then it will be gone. This generation, this generation won't see it. So, but I've thought about it, but I can't retrain a 9-year-old.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The way we bless our parents, our grandparents in the Dominican Republic, we say, "God bless you, grandmother, God bless you, grandfather." In Spanish, it's bendiciones, but we like to shorten it. It's like sion abuela, sion abuelo, sion mami. And it's just something that our parents, our great-grandparents, you know, have been taught to do, to always bless your ancestors when you first see them. And so it's interesting you say that, because I've also gotten really lost on that path of like God blessing my family because my mom, my mom and my dad taught me to do it, but growing.
You don't do it anymore?
I do it. I do it.
Oh, okay.
I
About
do
to
it.
say, like, I
I
still
do
do it.
it.
I still do it too. Yeah.
I do it, but I tend to
Okay.
forget because I don't spend a lot of time in my home country, and it just sometimes it just gets lost, in my train of thought. But that's a good reminder to never forget that tradition
Yeah.
of blessing your ancestors because they've put so much into your future.
I love that.
Oh,
yes.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Wanted to ask that question.
No, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that additional context, and it's interesting to hear from your perspective as well, because you grew up with it, but you're also kind of forgetting it sometimes. And I wonder, like, it's not too late to like add that into a 9-year-old's life, right? Like, if you can share the background and the experience, like it might not be in the same way that you learned it.
Something that he does every day moving forward, but at least he'll understand. But he does that to my mom and my dad. Like, he knows to say it to them, but obviously ancestors, so I have to introduce, maybe I should explain it. This should probably help a lot.
Does anyone else have traditions like that?
Traditions and like community keeps people together, and it's something that you share that other people aren't like connected with. It's like sacred.
Yes.
And I think like as Black people we don't have like a lot to pull from unless like I don't know I mean I'm not sure, so that's something that like I want to do moving forward. And it could be dumb stuff like, you know what I mean? Like nothing crazy.
But
like,
it just gets rooted, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just that like reminder, and it's something shared that you all have. It means something special for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm curious if there's a piece of what she's saying about like creating new stuff. Does that, like, do you think about that at all with Elliot?
No, I think like a lot of what we do is on autopilot just because of like how we grew up, that unless I get asked or unless I really think about it, like I don't like, oh snap, like we actually always do XYZ and that's a tradition and we need to keep it up. It's just in the programming. And no, I don't think about maybe having anything new yet, but I will now. Yeah.
Before I let you pass that question on, I noticed that you looked like, Anya, you looked like you had something to say to that when I asked if anyone else had traditions. And not to put you on the spot, just...
Maybe just within our family, but my dad's Iranian and my mom's Austrian. But we never grew up with the culture because they moved here and we didn't live near family. So I think like there's probably more cultural things when we like go to Austria, because I've never been to Iran. But yeah, I don't know. We're always like a very affectionate family. Like hugs are required and like willingly given. But yeah, I was like trying to think. I think like music is always ingrained in us as like our family unit.
Willis, do you want to pass your question to somebody?
Yes.
Okay.
To you.
To me. Can you
Yes.
reread your question, please?
The question is, what is a tradition that warms your heart?
That is a really great question. What is a tradition that warms my heart? I was thinking about that actually as you all were talking, and I don't know what traditions we have. Like, my family evolved in a different way when I was older. So my parents split up when I was the end of my senior year in college, and I grew up my whole life with tradition. Like, everything was a tradition. Holidays were a big deal in our family. Every holiday, like, we had a birthday bear, and we had an Easter bunny, and we had major Christmases. And it was never about the gifts. It was about the things, right? The things we did. And we took trips as families, even if they were just like car drives, like they were like a big to-do. But when my parents split up, I would say every tradition went out the window, and neither side of the family like regained tradition. We tried, I think For a while, we tried to do soup kitchens on Christmas because we never knew which way to go. Because you're adults, like, it's not like shipping the kids back and forth between parents. It's deciding who spends what holiday with whom. And I think that's so much harder in some ways. But so we tried soup kitchens for a while so that it was in a neutral place and so that we could all be together so we didn't have to choose. But over time, that just like doesn't work anymore because dynamics change. And I think it's strange when you don't have a tradition to root in, because it means every holiday is a battle over who does what, when do we go, who do we spend it with. And I would say it's lost its magic a little bit. Like, none of us are really religious in our family, but the holiday itself was, I guess, our version of religion. And so I hope that I get to discover traditions again, because I think it's something to look forward to, like having routine or having some sort of cadence to like how you come together. But yeah, I think that question is a really interesting question. I think we could take for granted traditions in a lot of ways, and I would get grumpy about some traditions. But yeah, I really I miss them in a lot. Thank you for asking that question. I think that's a question that I would love to think more about, and hearing how you all deal with tradition is an inspiration. Even like, you're just saying like your friends are trying to come up with stuff, or your family has this root music, or the way that you bless your grandparents and your parents and all of that. Yeah, thank you.
So my question is, how do you build deeper relationships? Which I thought was such a beautiful question, and I feel like we're modeling that tonight. Personally, I think building deeper relationships is about just being curious. I try to live my life by believing that everybody has something special to share, and everybody has a story that's important, and just to be genuinely curious. And by being present for people, you in turn create deeper relationships with people by asking questions. Like what Leah's doing is the best way, in my mind, to build deeper relationships with people. And yeah, that's something I try to practice on a regular basis. So yeah. Yoshi.
Passing the question over
Yes.
to me. Well, how do I build deeper relationships? Well, I've actually spent a little bit of time thinking about this before bringing it up here at the table. And I like to use experiences to build relationships with people. For example, I used to work at Amazon, and I consider myself to be a pretty outgoing person. If we have some kind of conversation, whether it be, oh, how's the weather looking today? I like to base off my conversations with, the starting topic and then build it from there. But I also like to incorporate any experiences that they might share, that I might share, and kind of just build it off from there. I think it's really important to kind of like build that kind of bond with the person, because then your friendship can go from just casually chatting at work, asking how their day was, to inviting them out to dinner, or going out bowling, which is exactly what happened with a good friend of mine at work. It was just casual conversations, and now we schedule days where we're going to go out to eat at IHOP or go bowling, or I plan on introducing him to Red Robin, because he's never eaten there before. Things like that. It's definitely, I find that to be a really good way to build a relationship. And also, personally for me, I also like including conversation starters. a random one. Please don't judge. I like to ask people if they like bread. Yeah, I
love it.
Either
Do people
if
say no?
they like to play along with the joke, and they're like, I don't know about bread. Like, which kind of bread do you speak of? You know, like they play along with me. Or I like to add in a question that my grandfather used to ask me a lot. He was like, "Do you think water is wet or dry?" Okay. But I like it's just in other words, I like to rely on funny starters or like, awkward questions to get them to laugh and to get them to think of me as someone that they can joke with or someone that they can have fun with, and then build it off from there. And 9 times out of 10 usually usually works.
Have you ever heard of Bria Parker? Mm-mm. Okay, I need you to go and like just read and watch some of her stuff, because one of the things I love about her, has anyone heard of Bria Parker? Mm-hmm. You have? Yes. Okay, you guys have not. Mm-hmm. Okay, Bria Parker is, she wrote The Art of Gathering. I've told you about Art Gathering before. And she is this just masterful facilitator. And she comes from a family that is very different culturally, very different religious-wise. And so her whole life, she was like navigating different connections. But I bring her up because she's famous for saying that you have 5 seconds to get people's attentions, and then you have 30 seconds, and then you have 5 minutes. And if you don't get people's, not attention, but feel like they're bought in or feel like they belong in that scenario, and if in 5 minutes they don't feel like they belong, you've lost them, and you're not getting them back. And so the fact that you do that, you're like so aware that people need to be like latched in, and that's such a beautiful skill, like such a beautiful skill. Oh, you're welcome.
So smart.
Please do not lose that. Yeah. Keep using it, because also, I mean, like what we're doing here, you said, Anya, earlier that as we get older, it's harder to make those connections, and it's so true. So like, as you're younger, you're surrounded by a bunch of young people, so you just meet people and you get to know them and whatever. But as you're older, part of the reason it's hard is because we spend so much time focused inward and focused on like how we're growing and how we're becoming more and more and more healthier, better, advance in our careers, that we forget to look outward and ask like, how are you doing? How are you really doing? What's going on? What's going on with you right now? And find those like really sticky points in relationships. And so we just sort of float in these spaces of surface level. So, Shira, you're amazing, and I just adore you. Like seriously, yeah, it's great.
I think you also kind of have to be a little fearless. Like, this just happened today. I was at the thrift store, and like it was quite busy, and I was just by myself and was hearing like people chatting, 2 girls chatting next to me, and one of them was like, "Oh, did you see the show Atlanta?" And her friend was like, "No," and like their conversation just ended, and I was like, "I have." And I was like, I don't know what. That's like not what I do, but I just like did that, and then like. And then she like made some reference to like, I think it was like some shirt, something was written on the shirt. And I was like, oh yeah. And then like, we were going down the aisle slowly together, sorting through clothes. And then we were just like showing each other clothes. And I was like, oh, what? Like that just like can happen like that. It's like a playfulness that like,
Exactly.
I have. And they were like, wait, what? And I just like, you just have to somehow get out from what you think is acceptable or normal sometimes, and like
I think it's like really who you are, like show up as yourself.
Yeah.
People deserve to really see you, and connect with you, so I think that's like super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Think about how many times we hide ourselves, right? Because like we feel uncomfortable, or we feel nervous, or we use our phone as like a armor or something like that. Have you ever been in a group or an event where you're just like, I'm gonna text in order to feel more comfortable? And if we just stood there open and uncomfortable, more than likely you have someone approach you at some point.
That's what I love about friendships. Just being able to meet new people in the most randomest spots and create a connection in somewhere or another. I love that. I love doing it. I love it when people approach me and they do that with me. It's just, it's so awesome. It's the kindness that they show that really brightens up my day.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, because I know, Willis, you had said this year or in the last year that you've been connecting and going deeper with people, and you wanted to get more rooted with people. How's that going, and how are you doing it?
It's going, but I think business sort of like was the conduit to that, because, well, I heard this yesterday, but as an entrepreneur, you have to it's a constant self-development. Like, you just can't stay at the same level. So you're always like learning new things and have to step outside of your current self. So this whole last year was a whole lot of that. And it forces you to you have to level up. So, and then leveling, I'm an introvert, so I'm a lone wolf and I'm an introvert. So me alone, awesome. So having to step out of that and go talk to people and do all of that, I could always do it, but I always had to motivate myself to do it. And that's becoming a lot lighter now. It's becoming, I can go out and do that. It's not a problem. You from New York, you're gonna talk to everybody, but I prefer not to. So the preference is changing, and hanging out with people like Leah has also, I'm catching things, and Katie's also extroverted, and I'm watching, I'm how do you do this? And I'm just now paying attention to that and applying it. So it's been fun, actually. Yeah.
So you got being fierce from Anya. And if you want, you can ask them if they like bread. Or,
okay.
If you want, it might go differently.
It might go differently now.
It might go differently, but give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Do you like bread? I'm gonna use that one, I promise.
What about you? I feel like you've been super quiet over there about how do you make these deeper connections.
I think I make good connections because I give a lot of myself, and I like to help people, the best I can, like through graphic design or whatever. And I never expected things from people. So I found a lot of genuine connections through that, and I guess just being a support system as well. And I think you'll find your people you can be comfortable with. Ask them if they like bread and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Those people, your people will gravitate towards you. You don't have to do a lot of work to find them. And once you find your people will tell their people about you, right? So I think that's what it's about.
So I don't think everyone does that, though. Think about how many people are building relationships with each other to get something out of it. They're intimidated by someone, so they'll maybe make them look bad, or they'll compete with them. Think about how often we see that.
Yeah.
So what made you want to share your people with other people, or open doors for people, basically?
I think when I say my people, I'm talking about my actual friends, genuine people I trust. And I think they're awesome. So it's things just make sense. Oh, you need to meet so-and-so, and hook people up that way. And I think you can't control how it will turn out, but if you have good intentions and you think hey, I think y'all need to meet, just how you set this up. We don't know each other all the way, but we trust you that you're connecting the right people together. So yeah.
I think it's really admirable that you are one of those people that does that, though, because I've just seen it time and time again. Hasn't anyone else ever experienced it or seen it where you think you trust somebody and they don't pass your name along or they don't open doors for you. So the fact that you're doing that is really awesome.
And I think it takes time. Like even in my own friend circle, like they had to like really get to know me to be like, yeah, you need to talk to my kid. It's taking years to like develop the relationships I have, so
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious because we went through all these questions and I feel like they naturally built upon each other, which is really incredible. And I mentioned before we started the last 2 questions that it felt like everyone was talking really about legacy to some degree. They were talking about community, legacy, and teaching, right? Impact on younger generations or other access to knowledge. So if you're going to leave here tonight with something, like what is that piece forward on your legacy and on what you want to adopt out of tonight?
Intentional connection.
Can you elaborate?
I had a lot of anxiety coming here today, even though we hang out all the time, but it's like, I woke up that way and then there was a lot going on today. And I was like, even though I planned ahead of time, life happened. And I was just like, how do I breathe enough to like come here and do this today? Cause it's like, it's going to be a relaxed environment and everything's going to be okay. But the anxiety was there anyway. So kind of attempting to be present and being intentional about that. And then just sitting still and disconnecting, as I said earlier too. Yeah, so intentional connection, I think is.
I agree with you, Willis. I feel like I had very similar experience. I also like surprisingly also felt extremely anxious about today. I think I keep having these anxious feelings ever since like COVID. Like I feel like a totally different person. And so I don't think this would have made me as nervous 3 years ago, but I was extremely anxious and like very in my head going into this. And and this has been absolutely lovely, and I'm so grateful, and I would love to stay connected. I'm glad I made it through, one way or the other, with the noodle under my plate. But my goodness, I definitely struggled this morning.
What do you think that struggle was? Because it was different before COVID. You both knew what kind of to expect, right? Like you two are really good friends of mine, and yet there was still this like pit of anxiety. Like what was going on there?
I woke up that way, so I don't know.
Did you fall asleep thinking about it, or like did you?
No. I just like, you know how sometimes you wake up in a certain zone.
Yeah.
I was just like that. I was like, crap. I did 2 hours in the gym and I still felt like that afterwards. It was weird. And then I had like fires to put out at my space. So it just never like slowed down. I don't know. How about you?
I was just in my head, like so in my head. It was weird. I feel so much more comfortable in general, like hearing other people's stories. It's just so much more comfortable for me. And asking questions and just getting to know people. I feel much less comfortable telling my own story. So it's very in my head about it. Yeah. I think and it just caused so much anxiety. And I've practiced for 3 years being behind a computer, even though for so many years before that, like I was in front of people constantly. I've just forgotten how to be that way. It's like I've unlearned everything I knew. I've unlearned, and it just brings up a ton of anxiety. Like all of a sudden, like unexpectedly, I'm like, what is wrong with me? It's weird. It's so weird.
I think it's pretty normal, actually.
Yeah.
I think, does that resonate with most of you? Yeah.
Yeah, talking about yourself is a lot. It's like, how deep do you want to go? How's this going to be perceived? Like, yeah, like we don't know each other like at all. But like in some ways that sort of like makes it lower stakes or something. Maybe that's how I felt
but
a little bit.
you all are so lovely. Like I'm so
Likewise.
honored. Like so honored. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like thank goodness you all opened up, because I'm like, this is amazing. You know? It's so weird. So weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to share your story, especially if you don't, like, you're not used to someone listening to you or being heard. But I think it's so important that everyone gets that space, because otherwise you hold it in, and what does that mean for the world when they don't get to hear your experience, your lived experience, what you've been through? And there's still so much that I hope you all uncover from each other. But I am curious. I don't want to take away from what everyone else is saying. I just want to validate those feelings, those anxious feelings, because it's not weird at all, especially after the last 3 years. But not just because of that. I think we as a society are taught to be very individual. We're not taught to be in community, even if there are communities. Who else wants to share about their legacy and what they want to learn, or what they want to adopt going forward?
Dinner parties.
All right.
Oh, for real? We'll host one together. Yeah, I think this format is like really powerful. It makes you try to, like, even the invitation you sent had like questions about how you want people to remember you when you leave a conversation or something to that effect, or how you would introduce yourself aside from your profession. And I was like, yeah, I know that answer. But then I was like, oh, I might have to answer this. Like, what does that actually mean? So like, yeah, just having very intentional, meaningful situations is important. Like you, Yoshi, were mentioning about like creating experiences to create deeper connection. Like this is a whole experience, and it feels so special. Which is like what should be when you interact with people. I think it's so easy to just pass people by all the time.
Yeah.
I guess for me, stepping outside of my circle more to build other circles and to connect with people. Like, you know, you sharing your story, like, really touched me. To know that, like, your daughter's doing design and, like, that's a special thing. So I feel connected even through that. So just being open to, like, venture out.
That's great. That's beautiful.
For me, I think it would be, I was thinking a lot about our conversation at first about teaching and the position I'm in right now at my middle school, and it kind of had me thinking, you know, I'm still pretty young. I'm a sophomore at college, and the only barrier I actually have when I think about it is just a financial barrier. Everything else, I can go into it full force if I want to or not. I'm free to make friends, or I enjoy making friends. I have so many opportunities when it comes to jobs, you know, with the connections I've made. And so it just had me thinking that because there aren't many barriers surrounding me right now, I should use that to my advantage to actually think about what I really want to do. And, you know, I've always had my ins and outs about education and if that's really something I want to get into. But sitting here with you guys today and, you know, having these conversations is like, can't really deny all the past stuff I've done before that has to do with teaching. I've taught all my life. You know, I'm a first-generation college student with my mom. She barely knew English when we moved here, so I had to help her with her documents. Her federal documents. I translated everything for her. So inadvertently, I taught her how to do a lot of things. And then teaching in high school, now teaching out of school, it's like, that's a clear pattern. And on top of being introduced into those opportunities and actually loving it, I was like, that's a clear, like, yeah, I should do education. But that's what this helped me think about. It helped me think about this. And then now when we leave from here, I'm going to actually take some time into deciding if that is truly my path, which probably is, but I'm going to think about it. I'm going to think about it.
Just remember, your path isn't always linear.
True.
It goes like this.
True. I love teaching, but I also want to do music therapy. I love music, by the way. Did choir in high school. Know how to read sheet music. So that's a way we can connect. That's an experience, So I'm in school for human services. I can take that a step further and get a degree in music therapy. That's another route I can take. But I guess in summary, knowing that I have all of these opportunities available for me, and that I have the freedom and the ability to think about it and actually decide, that's something that this conversation really opened my eyes to.
And the finances is not even a barrier. Like, there's so
True.
much money everywhere that you're gonna be successful. So you're gonna be good.
You've got a bright future.
Oh,
For
my
real.
gosh, definitely.
Thank you all so much. This was amazing. I am always blown away by what people decide to share or how they connect with one another. And once again, you all are just like warming my heart in the best ways possible, because I see the little connections that happen and the ways in which that you all can go forward out of this and connect with each other. And I hope that you continue to go deeper with each other and share more, because there's so much crossover at this table, if you all even knew. Oh my gosh. Like, the stories that you all have to share with each other are really incredible. And I just want to remind you that the braver you are to share your stories, imagine someone's life that potentially could be impacted by that. Because you're each individual very, very, very impactful people. That's why that's why you all are here together, here. Because I see that, and I see that with each other too. So thank you for saying yes, even beyond the anxiety or the nervousness or whatever else you might have felt, and trusting in this experiment. And I hope you all stay in touch and go a little bit deeper with each other. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So brag. Cheers to bread.
Y'all are amazing.